everyone. How have you been? I've missed you, AP students. Well, here we are with our online learning, and I told you a long time ago I was going to be a YouTuber, right? And here I am making videos for you. So I hope they're helpful. Please let me know, give me some feedback if these videos work for you, if they're helpful, if they're not helpful at all, if I'm making things confusing. Just let me know. So we have a couple of things that I want to update you on. Notice I use the royal we, right? I have a few things to update you on as far as the AP is concerned. So because of the coronavirus, because of the changes, because of the online learning, no, we're not 100% sure what's going to happen. Remember what we always say, right? God's got a plan. Just let God do what God does. We control what we can, and that's about it, okay? And what we can control is the way that we prepare for the AP. So there have been a lot of rumors online, a lot of buzz online about, oh, are they going to cancel the AP? No, they are not canceling the AP exam. So we will still take the AP. But there is some buzz about potentially modifying the AP, so that you, if needed, it may be an at-home online model of the AP. Okay, we don't have 100% of the information on that yet, but don't panic. You know we'll handle it, right? So we're still going to continue preparing. I am going to be posting for you videos from the College Board on ways to prepare and review for the AP. They're going to start publishing some videos for you that are for free on the College Board's website on Wednesday the 25th. I'm going to try to take those videos from YouTube and put them into PlayPosit for you so you can access them on your Chromebooks. If they're going to post those videos for free on YouTube, but you can't get YouTube on your Chromebooks. So don't worry about it. I'm going to take care of it, and I will create PlayPosits for you with every video that College Board comes up with, okay? So you will have full access to all that information. I will take care of it for you, okay? So today what I'd like to do is to discuss line of reasoning. You know that in both your argument and your synthesis essays, you need to establish a clear and logical line of reasoning to support your claims. We are, I think, we're going to try to do that murder mystery investigation, but just modified for an online environment, all right? And one of the things that I'd like you to work on in this I Am Malala open argument essay is considering your evidence, but considering exactly how your very specific evidence supports the claims that you're making. Now, when you're writing this essay for I Am Malala, you can't just say, well, Malala thinks that education is important because it helped her. Not enough. I need very, very, very specific instances from the text. I need really specific evidence for this essay. You have the book in front of you. It's right there. You've just read it. I want super specific information in this essay. And when you when you start developing your essay, I want you to be thinking about your logical line of reasoning. So I've posted this document for you on Canvas under the online learning plans, I think for Tuesday, the 24th. It should be on there. But creating a logical line of reasoning, I'm hoping that's not backwards for you. I really just want to go through this information with you. So what I would ask you to do is pause this video. And when you pause it, please make sure you have this document in front of you. You can either print it or open the file and have it open in another window, whatever you'd like to do. So now is a good time to please pause the video and access this document, creating a logical line of reasoning. Are you back? Okay. So let's continue. We're going to read through this thing together because I want to explain some things as we move along. A line of reasoning is the way you lead your audience from your introductory thoughts, ideas, claims, etc., to your principal purpose or your principal claim. It's the way you prove to us that your evidence, your reasons, your logical connections persuade us to believe your thesis. Okay? So whatever it is you are claiming is true, whatever it is you are claiming is correct, whatever it is you are claiming we should think, feel, believe, do, whatever, you got to give us good reasons to believe you. All right? In order to create a persuasive line of reasoning that readers can follow, let's follow along. We have to understand the natural instincts of humanity, right? And we've talked about this all year long. How do you persuade and convince people? Going all the way back to Aristotle, right? He suggests we rely on prepared ways of thinking through argumentative topics to create recognizable lines of thought. If people can follow your logic, they can be persuaded, right? I had to do all of this thinking before I made this video for you, because you've got to be able to follow what I'm saying in order for you to learn this material, okay? So let's come back to the text. This type of preparation asks students to develop their argument in general, recognizable lines of thinking, which are often referred to by rhetoricians as Aristotle's common topics. And we've got 5 of those, basically. We've got definition, comparison, relationship, circumstance, and testimony. Okay, that's our 5th is testimony. And let's just start by thinking about big picture, right? We have to define the issue. When we look at definition and lines of reasoning, definitions, let's look at our little checklist here, can limit the subject argued to a certain class of things, right? Like a genus. So, in other words, the subject is defined by the limits fixed on the terms, all right? Socrates used a strategy to defend himself against the charge he's an atheist. Socrates questions what it means to, by the term divine, blah, 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 blah. In order to create a logical line of reasoning, we have to first set our parameters, right? We've got to set, sometimes we need to set definitions. This may not be necessary for every claim, but for complicated claims or claims wherein people may argue, but what do you mean by education, right? If we're thinking I am Malala, we say students should have equal access to education. Fine, but what does that mean? What does education look like? What should that include? Does that mean access to mathematics and writing and reading skills? Okay, maybe. Or does it mean access to education in regard to religious studies? That definition is going to change your claim. It's going to change the way people think about your claim. So we have to consider the parameters that we set for our claim, right? How do we define what we're talking about? Where do we begin? Where do we end? How much is included here? That's all part of definition. Definitions can divide the terms of the arguments into parts to clarify the concepts. The strategy of division can also serve as an organizing principle for the argument. It's ways to order the ideas. It might be a way to move through your material and your evidence or your arguments to separate them into categories and to say, for this category, then this is what we do or what we believe. For this category, if you can chunk it like that, it might help you to establish a clearer line. Instead of trying to discuss everything at once, break it into categories by definition, elements of something. That's one strategy to develop a line of reasoning. It is not the only strategy, okay? Another is comparison. When we're trying to explain our rationale, our reasoning for believing what we believe, we might use comparisons to help people feel the same way or understand or have some kind of point of reference so that they also are persuaded, okay, in the same way we are. So we have to think about things like similarity, right? It's a basic principle of many arguments. The human tendency is to measure one thing against another and to rely on the familiar to better understand the unfamiliar. We use things like metaphor. We use things like similes, right? To help people have a better frame of reference. If they understand something familiar, they can relate that familiar idea to an unfamiliar idea. If we help them understand the unfamiliar idea, they can then be persuaded in regards to that unfamiliar idea. All right, it's the same thing we're doing right now. You might have questions about line of reasoning. I'm trying to make it something that's understandable for you. Here we go. Okay. I'm going to skip through the rest of that understanding there because you've got that. Degrees. All right, so we have similarity as a way of developing comparison. We also have degrees of comparison. Now, there's a lot there. Please read through that list break it down into little pieces, all right, go through. But overall, degrees of similarity or difference, basically more or less, helps to advance arguments for one thing as better than another or worse, right? So this comes back to claims of value. This thing is better than this thing is good because, this thing is bad because. If we break it down to degrees, we might say, students having access to education is good, but access to education with technology is better because. All right, now we are developing our argument and we've got a claim of, a logical line of reasoning to support our overall claim, whatever that claim may be, okay? So degrees basically breaks down to something being better or worse than, and how much more so or less than, okay? Relationship. This is another strategy, but notice that it's very similar to the others, ultimately. When we're developing a relationship or trying to show a relationship in line of reasoning, we have to consider things like cause and effect, right? What triggers this result? What cause, what action sparks any kind of reaction or effect? This is our why, right? And it's the curiosity, the natural curiosity of humans to want to know why something is the way it is or became the way it became. We have to think about that cause and effect, and if we can clarify or show that cause-effect relationship in our essay, our reasoning will be much more clear and our essay will be more persuasive. People will be able to understand, oh, I see why this is the result of that, so I should also consider or believe or feel whatever, all right? We can apply that mentality there. Antecedent and consequence is very similar to cause-effect, okay? But it pursues a line of thinking that claims when given a certain situation, what will follow is a particular consequence. We have to be careful with this simply because we don't want to fall into that post hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy, right? That thing will always happen that way because of this unrelated cause. You've got to be very careful to avoid false cause-effect. But antecedent consequence is very, very similar to cause-effect. Contraries, right? These are our opposites or incompatible things of the same kind. In order to create a strong line of reasoning, we have to make sure that we're comparing things that are comparable, right? This all goes back to our logical fallacies. We can use those contraries, though, to help when we're giving alternate situations, alternate cases, and our contradictions, right? It's built on the principle that a thing cannot be at the same time and in the same respect be and not be. So we can't claim that climate change is damaging to the environment and then simultaneously say that it's not damaging. Clearly they contradict. They both can't be right. We've got to find which is correct, okay? However, we can set up our contradictions to help support one side of the argument or the other, all right? So just be very careful with the way you use contradictions. Make sure you're very clearly, concisely, always bringing everything back to your thesis. Circumstances for line of reasoning. Circumstances give us that possible or impossible scenario. When we talk about circumstances, if this is the case and if these are the conditions, then this will be the most logical conclusion, all right? Basically, it proposes that a course of action is possible or discourages another course of action as impossible. Under certain criteria, under certain conditions, this could be the best, all right? And so then we use that sometimes for qualifying essays to make things a little bit more clear. That's a good way also to try to work through your counter arguments, okay? So what about the what if scenarios, right? If your counter argument involves something like, yeah, but under these circumstances, this might not be the case, right? And so we'll use our circumstances in our line of reasoning to rebut those counter arguments, to say in some situations this might be the problem, however, right, in most situations, most circumstances such as, then what is it that you're trying to claim? What is it that you're trying to argue? Okay, so you can use circumstances to help you, especially when you're working on your counter arguments. Finally, the last element here under circumstances is the past fact and future fact. We've got to think about all kinds of very specific evidence to build this. This requires support, evidence, or argument to establish a past fact. We have to show historical evidence. We've got to show some kind of empirical data. We've got to show something, personal experience, anecdote, whatever it may be. If we say this is how it happened in the past, then we can claim, careful of post hoc ergo propter hoc, that it may occur that way in the future, right? Does history repeat itself or not? All right. And finally, our last element is our testimony. Testimony, guys, this is your ethos, right? We're right back to authority, testimonial, statistic, maxims, laws, precedent. This is all our evidence, right? And we use our evidence to support our line of reasoning. By showing proof that we are correct, we can show our audience that they should believe us. Okay, so don't let this be overwhelming to you. Don't let this be too much. It's very simply just a bunch of ways to make our arguments make sense. If we think about how would you naturally in conversation convince someone to believe something, it's all the same tools, right? You can break it down and say, oh yeah, I would compare it to something else. Or yeah, I might have to explain what I'm trying to argue through a definition. Or I might need to say, well, this would be a little bit better than something else. Well, that's degrees, right? I might need testimony or evidence or eyewitnesses, whatever it might be, all right? All of that evidence. This is everything we've done all year long, just a quick review, but when you put these in the most logical order to persuade your audience, you will have a clear, strong, logical line of reasoning, which will create a more persuasive essay. Hopefully I will talk to you again very, very soon. I hope you're all well. I hope to see you soon. Bye.